Welcome to the Brand Doctor Podcast, strategies that help entrepreneurs build reputable and profitable brands. Here's your host, Henry Kaminski Jr.
How to leverage influencers and grow your personal brand. If you want to increase the impact and influence you have on your audience, stick around. I have an amazing guest today, and we are going to talk about how to level up your personal brand using influencers. Without further ado, I want to introduce my man, David Lee, to the show. He's been in the game for 8 years. He's a digital marketer and strategist, David Lee Consulting. Dave, what's going on, my man?
Hey, Henry. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate the time here. So I've been in the business for on and off about eight to 9 years, helping a lot of businesses, from small businesses to agencies to even global brands. So one of the areas that I kind of bring value to the table is really leveraging influencer management and influencer marketing. So it's how to leverage these, kind of online celebrities to help you either push your own brand or products into social media channels. So I've been doing that with pretty much about 3 different brands. So I used to work at an agency called TBWA in New York City, right by Midtown. And basically I worked on accounts like Nissan Global, as well as Michelin and also TD Bank. And then previous to that was Pirelli Tire North America. So there's a lot of different interesting ways to leverage social influencers, whether they're micro influencers, people who have like about 1,000 to 5,000 followers, all the way up to the folks that have like 1 million followers. There's a certain way to communicate to them, and there's a certain way how you can do value exchange. I want
to dive into that. I want to let's just dive right in, right? So how does one communicate, like, initially with an influencer?
Yeah. So a lot of times people, that's like half of the battle is when you're reaching out to them. Some people, they don't have their ducks in a row. So they'll reach out and say, "Hi, my name is Dave. Love to work with you." That doesn't really work, because a lot of times these folks who have like 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, they might be bombarded with messages, right? So a lot of times you have to be very strategic and very covert in reaching out to them, whether it's directly on the DMs, or they might have an email for you or a phone number, right? You can find all that information on their website. Usually if they have a lot of followers, they have their own brand website and say, "Hey, if you want to do business with me, this is how you get in touch with me." That's one way. Now, there are folks that have 1 million plus followers and they don't want to give that information out because they're getting 1,000 calls every day. So what happens is that you got to be doing a little bit of detective work, right? You got to figure out what events they go to. Are there ways to do face-to-face? Who do they know? And leverage that kind of connection, and then get in there, because a lot of times you got to present a value to them that they want to leverage or use for their channel. It may be content, it may be special access to events, it might be gifts, it might be monetary, whatever it may be. You have to figure that out up front so that they can give you the time of day and say, "Okay, I'll listen to you and let's see how we can work together," or do whatever. So from my experience working with the brands and coming from an agency side, we typically leverage a lot of the influencers that had a couple of thousand followers, whether it was, trading, come to our event, but take photos and then share those photos with your followers and then tag us in it, building that kind of ecosystem amongst influencers and the kind of big players in certain industries really help out with your brand, because we saw substantial, increase in lift and engagement, followers, people start asking questions about the product, right? So a lot of times, my experience with Pirelli, we would give certain drivers, perks, whether it's tires or, access to certain events. And, their followers would say, oh my God, how do I get that event? Or how are those tires? That's the type of drive that we wanted to get with these influencer arrangements or influencer marketing. That was specific to automotive, but I've also helped out small businesses who just started out their social media accounts and they're like, hey, I would like to, reach 500 or 1,000 followers. How can I do that? So we leverage micro influencers because nowadays, if you have a cell phone with a nice camera, you got a couple of filter apps. I mean, a lot of people are labeling themselves as influencers or, whatever, beauty gurus or tech blogger and whatnot. So a lot of times you just have to seek out the folks that are, willing to collaborate with you, right? So they might have 1,000, they might have 5,000, they might have 10,000 followers. You leverage with them. So I've worked with a company that was local to New Jersey. They were a female apparel company, and they leverage micro influencers. I built out a strategy and said, these are the folks that you should target because they weren't looking for monetary gain. So it wasn't like, oh, I'll pay you $100, $500, or $1,000 to share my post or tag me in your post. But it was more like, hey, if you send me some merch, I'll wear it and I'll tag you. For the brand, that's like big because, with one shirt or one outfit, which might cost $50, $100, $200, you're getting the exposure to their 10,000 followers or 50,000 followers, and you're building that relationship. That's the key thing. I kind of forgot about that is that you're not just leveraging them as like a regular TV celebrity endorsement, right? Because a lot of people see through that. The authenticity is not really there. Like they know they're getting a big paycheck to rep, Pepsi or Microsoft or whatever. But when it comes to social, everything is pretty transparent. So people understand that influencers need to get paid because they're doing a lot of work to build out the content that are, stuff that people come every day or every week to their channel to look up and engage with that influencer. So a lot of times, if you could just provide them either, assistance with getting access to an event that they couldn't do on their own, that's a value, right?
You gotta look for the opportunity. So I'll give you a funny example how Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels became one of my clients. So we started the relationship and we were just I met him through a podcast. Really, somebody put me onto his podcast. I started listening to it, and next thing you know, I was in his coaching program, right? But what happened was he wasn't a client of mine yet. I was a client of his, but I was still a huge fan of the podcast, right? So nothing drove me more crazy as a designer than his podcast cover. His podcast cover drove me nuts. It just wasn't designed to the specs that I thought represented the true value that podcast was delivering.
Right.
So I took it upon myself and designed his podcast cover. And I sent it to him in a Facebook Messenger. And I said, dude, Russ, I don't care if you never use this, but here's your new podcast cover. And we joked and we laughed, and he didn't do anything with it for a couple of months. And then all of a sudden I got a private message. It was literally the morning of Thanksgiving a few years back.
Wow.
And he said, hey, I'm looking for somebody to revamp and basically consolidate all of my branding for ClickFunnels. Would you and your team be interested? And my hand got raised so fast. I said, we are in, right? So look for the advantages. And then the next thing you know, we're doing business for 2.5, 3 years. So just from a silly podcast, I shouldn't call it silly, but just from me seeing an opportunity of increasing the value of Russell's business by leveling up the design of his podcast changed everything. So you got to look for the opportunities and then capitalize on them, because most of these influencers, from what I understand, call me a micro influencer if you will. But what we're looking for is more exposure.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for people to get our word out because we know we can't do it with one mouth.
Yeah.
So I love where you're going with this, Dave. I just think you're right. People get tripped up in the initial conversation because they do not have their ducks in a row and they don't think that they can provide value to a person of that caliber when in fact we are looking for folks like you to step up and help us.
Yeah. Yeah. So to that point, it was, I'm not a, by all means, by the definition, social influencer. However, I was the guy behind the scenes, right? Behind the curtains, connecting people. Like I know influencer when they only had 10,000 followers and now they have 2 million, right? And it's the little minute things where do they trust you? Are you someone who's, going to just use them and then lose them? Or are you somebody who's going to help them, get them to the next level? Like you were saying, a lot of micro influencers are networking with each other and seeing, okay, how do we get to the next level, right? If your little network of folks are at the 1,000, 5,000 mark, everyone's trying to figure out that secret sauce to get to 10,000, right? Organically, right? There was just this article the other day about an influencer who had, I believe, like 3 million followers, but she had issues selling 36 t-shirts. I don't know if you saw that. It was kind of all over Adweek and really predicated on, how influencers bring value, but you got to pick the right ones because clearly she, whether didn't utilize her brand properly or didn't connect with her followers in the right way, because typically when you have 3 million followers, whether it's a brand endorsing you or a brand leveraging you as a social influencer, they're looking for that ROI, right? So, converting at maybe 1%, right? I should have sold, 3,000 or 30,000 t-shirts.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel bad for her, but she started.
I don't. And here's why.
Yeah.
Because I made the same mistake. I connected with some big influencers and I think I paid them about $4,500 and they brought me 25,000 followers by doing this giveaway campaign, right? So basically how this worked was there was a guy in Mexico who was a huge star in Mexico, and he was endorsing this particular brand that was giving away this product. So what this big, massive influencer did was he said, hey guys, go buy this product. But before you do that, you have to follow these four Instagram accounts, mine being one of the four. Okay. And that's how you get an opportunity to win this thing. Right.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was I got 15,000 teeny boppers from Mexico that followed this guy following me, which brought a huge disastrous, it really hurt my Instagram account versus help it. So the vanity metric increased. So you saw the big increase in follower count, but they weren't my ideal clients. Those people will never buy from me. And so when people come to me now and they say, dude, you got 103,000 followers on Instagram, but why is your engagement so low? Right? And I tell them the truth. Yeah. I go, listen, poor investment last year on an influencer campaign. I got 25,000 people from Mexico, and that's the reason. So the good news is the more consistently I produce great content, those teeny boppers don't connect with it, and then they just eventually unfollow. So it's the attrition has escalated. And some people may say, well, oh my God, aren't you afraid that you're going to lose all of that followership? And I go, no, I want to get rid of them faster than it's happening because I want to regrow and strengthen that follower account. So I see these people with massive followings and people throwing money at them, but meanwhile they have 200, 300,000 followers from a country that they don't even do business with.
Yeah.
And so be very, very careful of who you pick. And now there's great tools out there like Social Blade where you can type in an influencer account's Instagram account handle, and it will tell you how many followers it's gaining and losing and what the engagement rate is and all of that in a split second.
Yeah. So before those tools, a lot of the brands relied on me and the team that we developed, basically the social media, social media managers or coordinators basically going in and having to do this manually, because at the time it was just at the cusp of when all these tech companies were coming out with the analytics and like measuring the metrics of your channel and, figuring out the ROI, right? So it's like, okay, you invested this much money into social media. What are you really netting out brand wise, right? So for us, a lot of folks that are in social media marketing, I always we always talk about this topic of like, do you care if your influencer has 500 followers or 5,000 followers or 5 million followers, right? To your point, you were like, oh man, this person had 2 million or 3 million followers. Like, this is going to be awesome. It doesn't even matter if I only get 1%. That's still like 20 or 10,000 people that are going to see my brand online. But to your point, it's like, are they actually engaging with you? Are they actually buying something from you? And half the time, like, it's regardless, any channel, right? You're always going to get that kind of split. Like, how many of those people are actual customers? And then how many of those people are just people that like you because they have to enter into that sweepstakes, right? So the incentive there is a little bit skewed because they want a certain product. That's why they like you. And we've done many sweepstakes giveaways with like influencers, even dog influencers. So at the end of the day, you will see like how impactful that campaign was when a week later you see like, oh, the unfollow shoots up because they didn't win and they're like, oh, I'm not going to follow you. Brands now are getting smart and they're saying like, you know what, we don't care about the number of followers as long as we have a nice base. So like as long as you have over 10,000 for Instagram so that you can swipe up and get the link in your Instagram stories, then you're good. But it's predicated on your own business, right? If you can only handle 100 clients every year, why are you trying to get 1 million followers, right? Unless if that's the number that nets you 100 clients per year, then that makes sense. But if it doesn't, then you're in a rat race to just get numbers, right?
Well, I do want to preface this so people get the truth is I want you to really pay attention to why you want these followers in the first place, right? Because what I typically ask is that, number one, but number two, if you don't have, do you really need more followers or do you really need a lead generation system that converts those folks from follower to customer or client? Because if you just dump a whole bunch of followers into a broken system, you're doing yourself and your audience a huge disservice. So really ask yourself, am I set up for more followers? And if not, let's focus on the core issue first. Then we'll get into turning on the faucet, right? And bringing these followers in. So I always made sure I had a funnel set up. I had an email marketing platform like ActiveCampaign or MailChimp or Aweber. There's a gazillion of them out there. But like having that funnel set up properly prior to turning that faucet on is the make or break of your business and the whole campaign. So if you're gonna throw a couple $100 at these influencers, God, make sure that it's worth it.
Yeah. I've worked with a lot of small businesses. I've probably worked with over 100 different professionals and small businesses over the course of the 8-7 years. And I worked with restaurants. I started working when I was young, and I had a lot of family restaurants experience. And it's kind of like this, right? You can't promote your restaurant and say, "Yeah, I just want all the customers to come in." You got to design the menu. You got to make sure you have enough food, right?
Yeah.
I always tell people, I can bring you 10,000 people, but guess what? You're going to serve 100, and then you get pissed off the 9,900 other people. So, where's the value there, right? That's the same thing that you're talking about. Build out your foundation, your funnels, what have you, your lead gen, or how are you going to nurture your followership, right? So you've got 10,000 followers. What are you doing with that? Are you just, spitting out content and then they're engaging? You're like, oh, this is great. I'm part of an automotive group, and we discuss this all the time. So many people want free stuff because they're like, I got 5,000 followers. And then when you look into their profile, they get like 10, 20 likes per photo. And you're like, well, what happened to your 10,000 followers? Not really engaging, right? Whereas you see certain channels where the engagement is like 20, 30%, right? That's pretty high for social media. That means
huge.
Yeah, that means they have really strong affinity. Yeah, you have a core base of people that we're talking about like Oprah level, right? Ellen DeGeneres level type of like engagement. These are people like whatever you say, it's like, we'll do it. We'll buy it. We'll, whatever. Then you got like the kind of the market or industry standard, like 1 to 5% engagement rate, which is like normal, which people are like, I like this person, but if they told me to buy something, I'm still 50-50, whereas like people like Oprah, it's like, hey, I have a new cookbook. Boom. She has it probably down to a science. Her and her team knows that if she put out a post, 10,000 copies of that book is going to be sold within an hour.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's like people trying to aim to get to that level, but like you got to understand, like you said, build out your funnel, build out what your strategy is to nurture these followers. Because once you leverage using an influencer, that wave is coming, right? Like your situation, you got 25,000 new followers, and then you realize, oh shoot, they're not my target demo, right? Like you're looking for folks that are going to sign up for your programs or use your services, and these people can't even drive, right? So that's a situation. So when I work with a brand, I always say, okay, what is the content strategy, right? Because that's going to help you pull those people into your website, to your, email drip campaigns, to maybe providing a phone number so then you can do a text campaign. Because social media right now is, although it is a two-way street, it's still a little bit one way, right? You create your content, you put it out there, you just cross your fingers, you hope people engage with it. But that's all. You can't really get into their inbox. You don't really get into their phone. And those are the two areas where people are making transactions, right? I know, like I get a text or an email from delivery.com and it says, hey, here's a $5 coupon for food. I'm like, okay, sure. I'm hungry. Click. And within 2 to 3 seconds, they converted me. I'm buying lunch or I'm buying dinner right then and there. You can sort of do that on social, but it's not there yet.
Right.
That's the cream of the crop, is when you leverage an influencer and you say, hey, you know what? I have this great product. Mm-hmm. It's a t-shirt, it's a widget, it's a website, whatever program. And that person is able to convert like say 100, 1,000 people right off the bat. And that's like where you really get value. But like you got to pay a pretty penny or provide that value to them, right? It's like, it's a give and take type of situation. It's not just like, oh, by the way, I'm a nice guy. You're a nice guy. Can you do this favor for me?
I wish, right? I wish. Yeah. Which, and I love that you mentioned that, because that's going to segue straight into the doc's prescription. And there's a couple of things here, Dave, that you said that I really want to highlight. And the first thing is you got to provide the value up front, first and foremost. And that value starts with the relationship that you begin. I've connected with a lot of great people online. Ed Milet being a huge influencer online right now. Me and him I consider us DM buddies. We never met in person yet, but we actually do interact quite a bit on the DM. And it all started just by liking and commenting on his stuff. And he just saw me constantly showing up. And so he's going to give that respect back to me in the DM, and he's going to acknowledge. And that's one thing I love about Ed, is that he acknowledges the people that really support him. So really looking for that leverage. Remember what I said, like, look for the opportunity. When Russell's Facebook podcast cover design needed major help, I was the first one to step up and say, hey, I'm a designer. I know what I'm doing. Check this out, right? And he was wowed by that. And so if you just rinse and repeat that over and over and over again, that's going to help you tremendously connect with these influencers. I have another on Monday, June 3rd, Patrick Bet David is coming on the show. And he's got over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. He's got over 600,000 people following him on Instagram. So the guy's a major influence. When I reached out to Pat, I said, Pat, I got a podcast that is getting about 40,000 downloads a month. What are you promoting in the next couple of months that we can help you get that word out? And he wrote me back and he said, dude, reach out to this person and they will check you out and my schedule out and see if it makes sense. Sure enough, it took a couple of weeks, but I got that email back and they said, Pat's in. When can you get him on? And so, boom. So I saw him promoting something on his Instagram and I was like, I can help this guy through my channel. So it's that simple. So if there's anything you take from today's episode, it's that, providing the value and having the confidence to provide that value, because those folks are looking for that type of thing. I'll give you another quick example. I had a guy reach out to me on Instagram and said, I would love to help you promote your podcast. And he said, I'm able to connect it with voice technology. So for example, I can get your podcast connected with Google so that anybody that has Alexa or any of that voice technology can say, Alexa, play the Brand Doctor podcast, and you show up. He did that for me absolutely free, just so I can give him a testimonial. So he did it for the testimonial. So it was amazing. So now if you go to your voice technology and say, hey, Alexa, play the Brand Doctor podcast, you're going to hear my raspy voice. So
that's awesome.
That's it. I mean,
like that's what I call, like, people call it like the social equity, right? It's like you
relationship
have followers or you have some kind of talent, right? So this person's like, hey, voice marketing is a thing. People have Alexa, they have Google, they have whatever, Siri, and they're like, how can I capitalize on this opportunity, right? Yeah. And it doesn't make sense for him to approach you and say, oh, Henry, would you like to buy this for, X amount of dollars? But you see how he leveraged that, right? He's like, okay, I see the value in Henry giving me a testimonial, and I'm going to do a barter with him. I'm going to give him this voice marketing thing, and he's going to help me promote it to his 40,000 subscribers. And, it's a win-win situation. Now you're on Google, voice marketing platform, and he got a little plug, and it's like win-win. That's how, leveraging social influencers or starting that conversation really happens.
It was brilliantly executed, and nice. Big shout out to him for doing that. And so let's get into the questions from the community. Today's question is, how do I leverage my personal brand with my marketing? And so I'll take a stab at this, and Dave, I'm going to send it over to you and say, how would you be able to add some additional value to my answer? So how do you leverage your personal brand in your marketing? Well, there's a lot of great tips, and I'll give you a couple. One is the behind the scenes looks. People love the behind the scenes looks. So leverage your Instagram stories, leverage your Facebook stories, do a video, do a behind the scenes video. I have a videographer that comes here every Thursday, and she films me working with clients, doing live trainings, And we chopped that up and we put that out there as behind the scenes material. Share your story and really share that authenticity about you. I mean, I know the word's overused, be authentic, be transparent, but there's a reason why they keep saying it over and over and over again. People want the truth, and it's our responsibility to give it to them. So how you show up on social media is how you should show up in person, you know? And, you know, there's a lot of talk going on about Tony Robbins these days. And, you know, we'll probably do a whole show about that in the next couple of days. But the one thing that really bothered me about Tony was when I went to see him at UPW, he was completely a different person compared to what I saw him in the public eye. And that was a disconnect for me. When he used his vulgarity and the cursing and the ridiculous, like, I did not see that coming. And that was a huge turnoff for me because I thought Tony was that polished guy that I saw on television. Now, look on the flip side. Look at Gary Vaynerchuk. Yep, what you see is what you get with that guy. Like, I've met Gary a couple times now in person, and that he is the same dude that is on social media. So I give him a lot of props for that. So, like, there was no surprise there. So I have a stronger bond with him. So that's how you leverage it in your marketing. You show up and you really take a stance on what it is that you stand for and what it is that you're against, you know? And so, yeah, I was on this guy's Instagram live today, and I was in a bad mood, so I just let it rip. And there were people saying "I love you" in the comments because I just gave it to him like super real. I was rattled, and I needed to get this out because it was building up for so long, right? And so, you know, some people might have been turned off by it. Because I was dropping a couple F-bombs here and there because when I get fired up, that's what happens, right? People might have been like, oh, that guy's a little obnoxious. You know, bad enough he's fully tattooed, bald head from Jersey, right? Like, so that's the point I'm trying to make, though. You know, just get out there and stand for something, and you're going to be a polarizing figure one way or another because that if you really want influence, that's what you do because – you know, the people that are vanilla and always trying to duck and always trying to, you know, skate around the hard topics and the deep questions, they're not respected.
Yeah.
So, you know, Dave, how would you handle that? So, like, people want to leverage their personal brand for marketing in their marketing. What are some ways that you would suggest?
Yeah. No, to your point, it's really prevalent in today's society, given the situations happening with a lot of celebrities, like the kind of like the days of you hiding behind a certain persona is no more. You know, you have like things like TMZ, paparazzi, you have social media, everybody's watching you. So there's no faking it right now, right? You have to be like, 1,000% psychopath in order to be in the public eye. Like when you go outside your house, you're like, ooh, I got to change. This is who I am. And then when you go inside your house or you're like with friends, then you're a totally different person. However, that's different from changing your personality or adapting to your situation or environment, right? So just to give you an example. So the way I am with my parents is different the way I am with my friends. It's still me, Dave, but, you know, I don't talk the same way I talk to my friends, the way I talk to my parents. That's a little different. Before people say, start chiming in and say, well, you know, my brand is this, but my personality is really this. You have to have that nice medium, right? And what works for you. At the end of the day, it's really about what you want to project or what you are that you want to show on camera, right? So like how we're talking, this is a real talk, right? I get to see your personality, you see mine, and people just judge however they want to judge. You can't control that. But there are certain things that you can tweak. You know, I've worked with a lot of I do a lot of coaching with undergrad and graduate students who are kind of unsure of their career path or how to start their own business, but some of them are very shy. They say, I want to be not an influencer, but like somebody who has thought leadership, but I'm really shy talking to people, doing a video or even a video podcast like this. So how do I go about that, right? How do I build a brand around that? I was like, you can use that to your advantage, right? You don't have to be like, oh, well, I see Gary Vaynerchuk. So there's so many people like after Gary he blew up in the last couple of years, everybody wants to be that kind of persona. Like, oh, F this, oh, this, like very, very animated. And it's like, when you see the person, you can kind of tell that they're adding that extra emphasis on this cursing and that kind of attitude and whatnot. So you can tell like, oh, okay, you're just trying to be the next Gary Vaynerchuk. Yeah. With the Tony Robbins thing, I feel for you. I actually saw his Netflix special and I was like, oh, I see. Because I was in the same boat. I was like, wow, this guy's super polished. He wrote a lot of books. He does a lot of global consulting and all this stuff. And then when you see him in person, right, they did the behind the scenes and this guy is enthusiastic 100%, but you see another side of him. So I don't know whether if that's like a front that he's putting up because how people are transitioning into if you curse more and you have this badass attitude, people like you more. Because I think he has it down to a science where he knows his demographic group and he knows that if I act a certain way, I get more engagement or I get more conversion.
Yeah.
Now, to some people, they're like, wow, that's a little shady or that's not for me. For other people, they're like, wow, he's gaming the system. He's getting money. Yeah. It's really how you want to project yourself and then how you want to speak to your circle of friends, right? Whether it's 10 people or 10,000 people or 10 million people, right? Yeah. There are celebrities they give zero F's about how they conduct themselves in public, right? And there's people like that where, people still follow them because they see the real them.
And listen, I respect people for that, man, to no end. I want to leave people with this. Like, you really need to focus in on playing your game and not someone else's.
Yep.
And that is a huge thing because like everyone's comparing each other. Like you said, people are trying to be the next Gary, the next Tony, the next this, the next that. And that's just going to create a whole bunch of mummies. Like there's just going to be a whole bunch of people just like, and there's going to be no originality anymore. Yeah. So I really want you to really focus on playing your game. What feels good to you? Because you are the unique factor in your brand. And if there's any leverage at all, or if you want to look at leverage from a unique standpoint, like you are it. Mm-hmm. So that and run with it. Don't try to be somebody else. I'm not pointing fingers. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be like a couple people in my late 20s and early 20s. And I would go out there and I would try to be those people. And my friends and my family would be like, dude, what are you doing? You're making a fool of yourself.
Yeah.
So I know what I'm talking about because I've done it and it got me nowhere. So that's why I can sit here and tell the story and share with you that you have to be you and people are really going to love you or hate you. And either way, it's not your problem, right? Yeah. Right. You got to be comfortable with you. So Dave, where can people learn more about you and what it is that you do and how you help your clients?
Yeah. So my business is located in the Rutherford area in Bergen County, New Jersey. And you can connect with me on social media. My handles are David Lee Biz. And my website is www.davidleeconsulting.com. That's where I help out small businesses and agencies with digital marketing services, everything from websites to social media. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Beautiful. David, thank you for coming on the show today. Great insight. I'm so happy that we connected on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, that's where it is at. Like LinkedIn is going to be the new forefront for social media where people are connecting and transacting. So I'm really glad that we connected and I was able to do this podcast with you.
Thanks a lot, Dave. So there you have it, guys. Another episode in the books. Real quick, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Drop some comments, drop some likes, share this. If you have questions, that's what the comment section is for. Would love to engage with you and interact with you down there. If you haven't written a quick little written review on iTunes, appreciate that. And if you're new to the show, welcome. Last but not least, guys, the brand new Brand Yourself course is out. The link in the description and in the show notes is access to this course. And this course is essentially the blueprint to creating a phenomenal, profitable, reputable personal brand. So if you're a coach, consultant, speaker, entrepreneur that wants to level up their influence and impact and really have a structured way of doing it and creating a great personal brand, the Brand Yourself course is where it's at. So have an amazing day, guys, and I will catch you on the next episode real soon. Take care.
You've been listening to the Brand Doctor Podcast with Henry Kaminski Jr. To get your appointment with the doctor, visit Brand Audit at www.uniquedesigns.net.